If it's Monday, the suspect accused of brutally attacking demonstrators marching in support of Israeli hostages will be appearing in court for the first time as authorities prepare to brief the public moments from now with what they know about the alleged terror attack. Plus, Ukraine launches massive drone attacks deep inside Russia, targeting dozens of military aircraft in a stunning operation that involves smuggling more than 100 drones behind enemy lines. Russia's response and what it all means for the negotiations to end the war. And the battle over Trump's mega bill hits the Senate, with lawmakers at odds over the package's sweeping cuts to Medicaid and how much the legislation would cost. Hi there. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Ryan Nobles. We're going to begin today with that breaking news out of Boulder, Colorado, as 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Soliman, the suspect in yesterday's fire attack on a group calling for the release of Israeli hostages, is expected to make his initial appearance in court in Colorado this afternoon. Now, police say he unleashed a makeshift flamethrower into a peaceful crowd. He's facing criminal charges by local authorities and hate crimes charges by federal authorities. Soliman was taken into custody shortly after yesterday's attack, which injured at least 8 people, including one who's in critical condition. Witnesses described a gruesome scene as they rushed in with buckets of water to help the injured. Now, we do want to warn you that the descriptions of what happened are graphic.
I saw the attacker have a Molotov. He had 3 Molotov cocktails. One of them he threw inside of a group. At the group, and one lady lit on fire from head to toe.
I jumped over this tiny little fence over to these 2 ladies on the grass, and it was 2 older ladies just kind of rolling around a little bit. I was just like, how can I help? And they had really bad burns all up on their legs.
Now, according to newly filed court documents from the FBI, Soliman told investigators that he had planned the attack for a year and specifically targeted what he described as a Zionist group, which he found through online research. Now, investigators say they found, among other items, a container with at least 14 unlit explosive devices in bottles and jars near where the suspect was arrested. Authorities say he shouted "Free Palestine" and used the explosives to attack the demonstrators who were marching in support of Israeli hostages. The FBI says the victims ranged in age from 52 to 88.
It is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism. Sadly, attacks like this are becoming too common across the country.
The FBI is calling this an act of terror, and President Trump is blaming the Biden administration for allowing the suspect, an Egyptian national, into the country. Posting on social media, quote, "He came in through Biden's ridiculous open border policy. He must go out under Trump policy. Acts of terrorism will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal is in Boulder, and she joins me now. Also with me, NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. So, Camila, you're there on the ground. We just got these new court documents. What are we expecting from this upcoming court appearance?
Yeah, it was supposed to happen this hour, Ryan, and it got delayed. But we did get the state charging documents just moments ago showing 8 counts of attempted murder as well as assault and other charges. We're waiting, of course, to hear those in court and to hear if this man is going to enter a plea. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in that court appearance that, again, was delayed just moments ago. In those charging documents, the state also addressing what happened here yesterday. It happened about 24 hours ago at around 1:30 when this suspect came to this area, specifically targeting this group of people that meets here regularly and have been doing so since the October 7th attack. Authorities saying that he waited for this group, singled them out because he wanted them dead. Also, that hate crime affidavit from the federal government essentially saying that he had everything prepared. He looked it up on YouTube and built built these Molotov cocktails. He not only threw 2 of them at the crowd here, but also had 14 others. There are witnesses on the ground who talk about how chaotic, how scary that moment was. There's people who rushed to those victims to try to pour water on some of the burn victims. And of course, the community here in Boulder sort of coming together to support the victims, but also the Jewish community as a whole, Ryan.
And what do we know about the victims' conditions? You mentioned how the community has kind of rallied around all of them right now.
Yeah, initially they had said that the injuries varied essentially from minor to very severe injuries. We know that one of those who was severely injured was an 88-year-old woman. And my colleague Morgan Chesky spoke to a local rabbi who just said that not only she's okay, but she has been released from the hospital. The rabbi also saying that, yes, she is a Holocaust survivor. He said she is someone who knows what it's like to be a refugee, someone who knows what it's like to fight anti-Semitism and to stop hate in particular. So again, the community just rallying behind that victim. But in total, it was 8 of them, 4 men, 4 women, all again with different injuries. 2 of them had to be airlifted. And authorities had said that burn injuries are very difficult to treat because they can develop infections. They can be life-threatening. So we are waiting on an update on all 8 of them, but at least we know that the eldest, the 88-year-old, has been released from the hospital, Ryan.
All right, thank you, Camila. Let's turn now to Tom with more on the investigation. So, Tom, what is the significance of charging the suspect with a federal hate crime?
Well, I mean, the significance of that is it's really, think of it like a bookmark effectively here, Ryan, in that federal authorities will still need to indict at some point. There is an option to take somebody to trial without bringing an indictment, but you'd have to have a preliminary hearing, and that almost never happens. And at that indictment stage, I would expect us to get more information as far as additional charges, perhaps terrorism charges. It all depends on what federal investigators find. And to that point, in the course of conducting their searches and at least their initial investigation, and of course it's barely been 24 hours since this investigation even started, they've been able to uncover a couple of different things. First off, the most enlightening part of this has been from this individual's statements, Solomon's statements himself after he received the Miranda warning. The FBI alleges in its complaint that he told them that if he could do it, he would conduct this attack again. He made numerous references to the Jewish community, and he said that he started planning for this over a year ago, looking up more recently how to build these Molotov cocktails by looking at YouTube. And at that park, according to law enforcement, they found 14 additional Molotov cocktails at least that he could have used, as well as a kind of a bug sprayer, one of those backpack-mounted ones that he could have used to basically turn into a makeshift flamethrower. Either way, this individual clearly came prepared to do something yesterday and was successful in carrying out that attack, injuring 8 as you laid out. So the significance from a federal standpoint, they could potentially bring additional charges, and if anybody unfortunately succumbs to their injuries, it could potentially be death penalty eligible on the federal level.
But at this point, does it appear that he acted alone, Tom?
It does, Ryan. There's no indication from the charging documents and all of the reporting that we've done over the last 24 hours at this stage of the investigation, and typically finding out if there's anybody else that could have helped him takes some time, but there does not appear to have been anybody else that he was involved with. It appears that he kind of came to this point on his own. A review of his social media accounts by us and by law enforcement, we're told, has not yielded anything as far as any specific posts or threats that he might have made in the past that would have come to anybody's attention.
And President Trump has already said that he was here in this country as a result of President Biden's open border policies, called him an undocumented immigrant. Do we know anything specifically about his immigration status, and was he in the country illegally?
Yeah, I'm going to bring in the reporting from my colleague Julia Ainsley and yours there in Washington, effectively saying, according to the DHS, that this individual arrived in August of 2022, in September of, and gets a B2 visa at that point. And then in September, he applies for asylum. That B2 visa expired in 2023, over 2 years ago. It is not clear exactly where he stands in the asylum process, but apparently that process was still going on. So that's the most that we know with respect to his immigration status. when he came here, how he came here. He does have a family that he leaves that is behind at the house, a wife and several children. So it's a bit of a question as to why he came here, and also if he tried to come to the United States in the past. Those are all questions that investigators and we have, and we're still trying to get to the bottom of.
And there's also another element to this, Tom, because President Trump is saying that the suspect must go out under the Trump policy, essentially be deported. But if he's charged with a federal hate crime in the United States, how does that impact whether or not he can be deported? And then what happens to the charges against him? And isn't there a degree of wanting to provide the punishment for him here in this country?
Well, that's a decision that the Justice Department will make, and they're part of the executive branch, so we can expect them to weigh in on that. There are times in other cases, I've seen it certainly in non-terrorism cases, where the Justice Department in the U.S. decides to throw somebody out of the country and not allow them to come back in, PNG, then persona non grata, and just say, you know what, we're not even going to bother with a prosecution. You're out of here. You can never come back here. I think that is typically weighed in instances where the cost and impact of a trial might be more than just the punishment of removing somebody from the country. In this case, given the graphic nature of the injuries and what occurred here and his alleged involvement as the key suspect, that's something the Justice Department will have to weigh and say, you know what, maybe it's better that he has the trial here and we make an example of people that try to do this against the Jewish community. That'll be a decision that'll be made down the road, Ryan.
Okay, Tom Winter, as always, on top of all of this, Tom, we appreciate it. Of course, we will bring you the press conference with the Department of Justice, FBI, and local officials in Boulder when it happens later this hour. We're expecting in about 20 minutes or so. First, though, we are going to turn to Ukraine's stunning and complex drone attack on Russia, reaching deep inside the country, delivering both a military and strategic blow to Moscow. According to Ukrainian officials, Ukraine was able to smuggle drones into Russia, place them on trucks, and then remotely launch them to strike Russian military facilities. The strike, dubbed Operation Spiderweb, involved 117 drones and more than 18 months of planning, resulting in the damage or destruction of 41 Russian aircraft, according to Ukraine's security services. NBC News has not been able to independently verify those claims. Now, President Zelensky was in Lithuania today for a summit with European leaders and touted the operation's success.
Europe, together with America, has better weapons than Russia. We also have stronger tactical solutions. Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that. Russia must feel what its losses mean. That is what will push it toward diplomacy. And when Russia takes losses in this war, it's obvious to everyone that Ukraine is the one holding the line, not just for itself, but for all of Europe.
Meanwhile, Russia and Ukrainian officials met in Istanbul today for a previously scheduled second round of direct peace negotiations. Joining me now is NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons and Richard Haass, the President Emeritus at the Council on Foreign Relations. So, Keir, what more do we know about this attack by Ukraine and the planning that went into it?
Oh, well, it's stunning. You really have to just think about how big Russia is. 11 time zones. Just to give you an example, Ryan, I've been broadcasting from, the far east of Russia, in the direction that some of these attacks took place, in the evening on the East Coast, and it's been the morning in Russia. I mean, that's how far away it is, just from Ukraine, for example, thousands of miles, so far away that it looks like the Russians were not actually protecting these aircraft, despite them being precious to President Putin. These are long-range strategic bombers, nuclear-capable even, and certainly have rained down horror on Ukrainian cities over many years. So for the Ukrainians, this is a victory in terms of, frankly, a humiliation of the Russians, but also a strategic, a tactical victory at least, in the sense that they say that they have hit a third of these Russian bombers. Now, I think it will take time to establish exactly how much damage there was, but they brought these trucks in like Trojan horses, clandestine, loaded with these drones, and then remotely controlled them. There were reports even that Russian truck drivers were not told, drove the trucks and were not told what they were for. This is something that the Ukrainians have proven pretty good at, in many ways, targeting, for example, generals in Moscow. But this is on a different scale, and it's having a different impact.
And how is Moscow responding to these losses?
Well, President Putin is calling it terrorism. That Russia is also saying that where Ukraine says that its operatives were able to leave Russia after, kind of preparing this attack, Russia says that it has made arrests. Those are the kinds of responses you'd expect. What we haven't heard so far is the kind of question of retribution that you might hear from President Putin in the days ahead. Interesting to hear President Zelensky in that clip you played there talk about that this kind of showing of strength is a way to get the Russians to the negotiating table. We will see. So far, some notable victories by Ukraine over the years haven't got Russia to the negotiating table, but then neither has the attempt by the Trump administration to kind of cajole President Putin to talk to him, and President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff spent hours with him. That doesn't tonight appear to have had an impact either, because after talks in Istanbul, it looks like the Russians still are not offering to compromise.
Okay, Keir Simmons, thank you for that. Let's move to Richard now. Richard, were you surprised to see Ukraine carry out such a complex attack like this? And what does it tell us about Ukraine's capabilities? Are they more robust than we thought?
Well, Ukraine has been, in some ways, the principal developer of new generations of drones. Indeed, militaries all over the world, not of drones, I'm sorry, of losing the word here, these technologies. And I think they're being studied, all over the world. And so this is, it shows that you don't have to fight a war tank for tank or aircraft for aircraft. So Ukraine is doing it with great ingenuity. They've also showed their ability to expand the battlefield, not through the range of the systems, but by getting them inside of Russia. So it's an extraordinary accomplishment. And it has one other advantage that we haven't discussed. It takes care of some of the defeatism. One of the arguments you hear from President Trump all the time is Ukraine has a terrible hand. It's got bad cards. And by doing this, Ukraine is basically signaling to the world, if you support us, you're not throwing good money after bad. This is not a hopeless cause. We can hold our own. And to the extent that that gets self-fulfilling, that gets adopted, then it's a really powerful thing for Ukraine.
How do you think President Putin will react to this? And how could Moscow retaliate?
Well, they are going to react. It seems to me it is something of a humiliation. I think there's no chance that this in and of itself moves Putin closer to the negotiating table. If he ever moves to the negotiating table, he wants to do it from strength so he can impose a settlement. This now shows a degree of tactical weakness. So I think he's going to unleash something very large, if not against Ukrainian military forces, quite possibly against population centers. That's the way he's been fighting this war. He's been fighting in the east, grinding, literally meter by meter. But a big part of his war plan is to attack civilian targets throughout the country. And that's easier for him to do than to show progress in the east. So my guess is we are going to see some very cruel, violent attacks, not so much against military targets, but against industrial and civilian targets throughout Ukraine.
On a separate but related issue, Poland conducted elections over the weekend. The pro-Trump conservative candidate won there. Poland has been an important ally for Ukraine. They've taken in thousands of Ukrainian refugees. Is there a concern that perhaps Poland's posture could change as it relates to Ukraine as a result of the results of this election?
Change is a little bit too strong, but yes, the president can frustrate in Poland's democracy quite a lot of the initiatives of the government. They can veto certain things. So it's not as though Poland's going to become pro-Russia, but it might become slightly more difficult for Poland to be as pro-Western as it has been, whether in its ties to Europe in particular. So yeah, I think this is a setback. It's interesting. The Trump administration goes to the Middle East and talks about how it's not going to get involved in domestic politics of other countries. Clearly, that doesn't apply to Poland or to Germany, for that matter. And there, they got the outcome they wanted.
Okay, Richard Haass, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Coming up, deficit denials. The Senate takes on President Trump's sweeping agenda bill as House Speaker Johnson pushes back on the massive bill's potential price tag. Plus, a case of die-hard support for the president's agenda. Republican Senator Joni Ernst responds after facing blowback from her own constituents over potential Medicaid cuts and her support for the so-called big, beautiful bill. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. Turning now to Capitol Hill, where the Senate is back in session, which means it's their turn to take up President Trump's mega bill, and it's their turn to deal with the same issues that complicated its passage in the House. First, deficit hawks like Wisconsin's Ron Johnson say they're worried about the package's price tag after multiple nonpartisan budget watchdogs say that it would add trillions to the federal deficit. Senator Johnson told Fox News yesterday that his loyalty is to the American people, to his kids and grandkids, and, quote, we cannot continue to mortgage their future. But on Meet the Press yesterday, House Speaker Mike Johnson dismissed those concerns. He said the bill would not balloon the deficit, arguing that all those nonpartisan budget wonks are just wrong.
We can't flip a magic switch and reverse it overnight, but this is the largest step forward in the right direction that Congress has ever made.
Mr. Speaker, if the big, beautiful bill does add to the debt, will President Trump own that?
It's not going to add to the debt.
Are you really telling the American people this will not add 1 penny to the debt and deficit? You can guarantee that?
I am telling you this is going to reduce the deficit.
There are also Senate Republicans like Missouri's Josh Hawley who would have taken issue with the bill's cuts to Medicaid, which the Congressional Budget Office says will lead to millions losing coverage. Hawley said, though, that he spoke to President Trump today and was promised there would be no cuts made to Medicaid benefits. It might just depend on how you define cut. Speaker Johnson also pushed back on concerns, saying that only individuals who choose not to work or are, in his eyes, abusing the system that would be impacted.
There are no Medicaid cuts in the big, beautiful bill. We're not cutting Medicaid. What we're doing is strengthening the program. We're reducing fraud, waste, and abuse that is rampant in Medicaid. There's about 4.8 million people that they're referring to that are able-bodied workers. If you are able to work and you're not, and you are riding on the public wagon, you need to help pull it. Those 4.8 million people will not lose their Medicaid unless they choose to do so. I will go into any town hall in any district in America and explain what this is, and every single person will nod their heads and go, oh, that makes sense.
Somebody should call him on that. He should he should do town halls all across. Why isn't he doing town halls all across the country, Sahil? I mean, what is the state of play right now in the Senate? Is there going to need to be and I should have introduced, this is Sahil Kapoor, my Capitol Hill colleague. We're just so friendly, I didn't even feel the need that I needed to introduce him. Sahil, welcome. What's the state of play in the Senate right now? Break it down for us.
Yeah, first off, Ryan, the Speaker is objectively wrong on the math of this bill. Yes, there are substantial savings and spending cuts in the bill, but you can only say it doesn't reduce the deficit if you ignore all the things in it that do increase the deficit, including the tax breaks and the hundreds of billions of dollars in increased spending the Republicans are putting in there. That aside, the bill is now passed the House. It's in the Senate right now, where Majority Leader John Thune has a margin of 3 votes, 3 defections to spare. Take a look at some of the issues that he's going to be eyeing, that he's going to have to balance when trying to get the 50 votes necessary to pass this. There are issues about Medicaid spending cuts. Some Republicans are nervous about that. There are issues about cutting clean energy funding. A lot of that goes to red states. Republican senators, at least some of them, don't want to cut funding for their constituents. The Senate is going to put their own imprint on the tax portion of this bill. Many of them have no use for that expanded SALT deduction, state and local taxes, that House Republicans from blue states demanded. There are other less salient but important issues like Spectrum Auction Authority for the FCC, the debt concerns, red ink. Rand Paul and Ron Johnson have been very vocal about this. And finally, they're going to have to squeeze everything through the Senate rules, the so-called bird bath, which makes sure everything in this bill complies with provisions that limit it to budgets, to dollars and cents, in order to bypass that filibuster, Ryan.
Obviously, everybody can score this bill to death, Sahil, but ultimately it's a messaging effort here, right? And trying to convince enough constituents that they are not going to be hurt by this, or conversely, that they're going to benefit by it. I have to imagine the Republicans hoping to see this pass did not want to see Joni Ernst over the weekend just flippantly say that everyone is going to die when she was challenged on the merits of this bill. How is she responding to that criticism after all the outcry from her town hall this weekend?
Everyone is going to eventually die, is what Senator Ernst was trying to say. I guess I should add that caveat, since she believes it was an important part of the point that she was trying to make. But as you can imagine, Senator Ernst got a lot of criticism for being flippant about what some constituents, some people who were shouting at her in that moment saw as a life or death issue. But she issued an apology that was equally flippant. Well, I should let viewers decide whether it's really an apology. Let's play it.
I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well.
Now, that video seems to have been filmed from a graveyard. Ryan, a little bit of background on Joni Ernst. She, of course, lost her position in Senate Republican leadership earlier this year. She was famously in the spotlight when she was indecisive about Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary. Initially sounded like she was voting no before coming out as a yes after getting a lot of attacks and some political threats from the right. Her seat is up for re-election in 2026. It's a reddish-purple state of Iowa, but Democrats are certainly watching it to see what she does and whether they find any opportunities there to potentially flip a difficult seat.
Yeah, and there's a couple of aggressive Democrats that are already in the race already. So just quickly, Sahil, is July 4th realistic? I mean, they really got to get moving if it's going to happen, right?
It's plausible, Ryan. It's a month away. Senators usually like to take longer than that to do a big tax package. But the reason I say it's realistic is there's an actual deadline staring them in the face. Everything up until now has been junk. Everything up until now has been a self-imposed deadline. They can blow through it with no consequences. If they miss July 4th, then they're getting really close to that end of July deadline by when the Treasury Department says Congress has to raise the debt ceiling in order to prevent a catastrophic default on the country's obligations. Remember, this bill has to go back to the House if they make any changes. So if they go past July 4th, they're really getting close, teetering on the brink of that end of July deadline to get it to President Trump's desk.
Okay, great, Sahil. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Let's talk more about it now with our panel. On set is Mariana Sotomayor, a congressional reporter for The Washington Post. Kimberly Atkins-Storr, senior opinion writer for the Boston Globe. She's also an NBC News contributor. And Republican strategist Rick Tyler. So, Mariana, obviously Congress is your domain. You were there watching closely. House Republicans wrestle over these same questions that Senate Republicans are going to have to deal with. I mean, what's going to have to happen for Senate Republicans to get it over the finish line?
Well, Senate Republicans have been telegraphing that they want to change this bill, as we just talked about. There's not that much time to be able to do that. And a lot of their concerns are ones that we heard House Republicans also have to overcome. A lot of it has to do with those Medicaid cuts. There are a number, at least 4 Republicans, who don't want to see any people lose their Medicaid benefits. But there's also, like you all recapped, those Republicans who very much want to see more cuts be made. They want to be able to make sure that this does not add to the deficit. So as of right now, there's probably like a solid 8 Republicans or so who have said these are my red lines. This is going to be a real test, I think, for Senate Majority Leader John Thune. It's the first time he's been a leader, has to corral all but 3 Republicans to vote this bill through. And I think what's notable and kind of different than House Speaker Mike Johnson is that this is still a new relationship with Trump.
Yeah, right.
Johnson has worked for years to get Trump to trust him, and they do have that relationship, and we've seen so far Johnson be able to tell Trump, hey, we should keep this one big bill. We should keep this going through the House first. And that kind of influence is one that Thune does not have at this point in time.
And Rick, isn't it really more about Donald Trump than it is John Thune at this point? I mean, it seems when he decides he wants something, his congressional allies step up and do whatever he wants.
Well, that's clearly not true. I mean, he said he was don't touch Medicaid. He had 45.5% of the cuts, of the spending cuts that are in the big, beautiful bill are Medicaid. But look, can I be flippant? We're talking about one third of 1% of overall federal spending. 99.7% of federal spending is not in the big, beautiful, mega MAGA bill. This is a puny bill. It's a tiny bill. It has marginal cuts. It spends about it has about $615 billion in cuts, but it has $400 billion in additional spending, which is a net gain of about $200 billion. Newt Gingrich got $400 billion with Bill Clinton in 31 years ago, in 1994. So it's half the savings of that. This revolutionizes nothing. Yeah, it is the status quo. It is a yawner.
Yeah. That's interesting that Rick says that, Kimberly, because could the Democrat strategy here be to kind of poke at those fissures that may exist within the Republican caucus, maybe taunt Republicans and tell them this doesn't cut nearly what you think it does?
Well, I think it's more important for Democrats right now to be clear about who it affects. That might be true, that it's a tiny percentage of the entire federal budget. But when you're talking about the people who are going to lose their health care coverage because of the changes in eligibility, whatever that's going to look like in this bill that I still don't understand, that's a big deal. And being flippant about that is what I don't care. Senator Ernst is not a comedian. I don't care about her jokes. What people do care about,
that was supposed to be a joke,
is that what the question she was being asked clearly was the fact that people are going to die if they lose their Medicaid coverage, and that's a big point. And for Republicans to be joking about that, I think, is pretty flippant. On top of the fact that this is going to balloon the deficit, something that Republicans screamed about when it came to, say, COVID relief during the Biden administration. So I think Democrats need to hit on all of those things. But if you want to really make voters understand why this is important, talk about how it will affect them.
All right, I want to play a little bit of what John Fetterman said this morning, the Pennsylvania Democratic senator. He was arguing the merits of this bill with his Republican colleague, Dave McCormick. Take a listen to this from this morning.
Another thing that I'm troubled that he brought up also is our national debt approaching $37 trillion. That's a lot. I mean, there was that joke or that quote. It's like, hey, now after a couple billions, that might matter sometime. And now we're talking $37 trillion. And now that's a significant danger for our nation's future, honestly, as well.
He sounds like a Republican there, Kimberly. And, you know, who is this message intended for?
I can't speak for Senator Fetterman. I'm not quite sure from one day to the next what his message is intended for.
Kimberly, actually, I'm going to have to cut you off. I'm sorry about that.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.